Wanted to run you through some suspension. So on this truck, what we have is a Hendrickson rubber block over walking beam. Big walking beam, it pivots, it articulates. Rubber block gives you the cushion. Believe it or not, they make a straight steel mounted one. We went with at least rubber block. Rubber block compared to air ride is extremely rough. This thing will pound out a truck. I've driven that truck. Old Blue has rubber block. I've been driving that for 7 years. It does just shake you, and if you don't have a load on it. With a load on it, it's smooth. Empty awful. But what we thought is with rubber block, it will shake the truck. So it'll shake our batteries, allow us to test our battery shaking features we're putting in. We'll show you that in hopefully a couple weeks. Check the generator, check how the e-axles perform. It also gives you great off-highway articulation for in the bush. It's a really tough, no maintenance system. You can have one of these on a truck for 40 years, maybe have to change out bushings twice. These things are indestructible. They easily, well, 1969, and it's still the original suspension. Plus, install, we don't have to worry about airbags, leveling valves, running extra airlines back here. It's just an incredibly simple, easy to install system, minus all the fiddling around with the alignment. Actually, that was probably easier if we put the airbags in, but yeah. Why don't I show you the difference to an airbag setup? What we got here is an air ride suspension. So this is a little bit different. Instead of just those rubber blocks, you have an airbag that lifts up. On top of that, you got a leveling valve right here. This leveling valve will adjust the ride height. Basically, the arm goes up and down. It adjusts the amount of air pressure into the bags in order to bring it to level. And the air gives you a much softer cushion. So it's a lot softer, it's a lot smoother, but it's also more maintenance. You have additional airlines to each bag on each side, running through multiple leveling devices. You normally have two, one on each side. Huh. Wrench. But yeah, that's kind of an air ride system. You got your shocks, you got your airbags, leveling valve. There's a lot more maintenance to this system. You still have the same amount of bushings and all that, but you also have shocks, bags, leveling valve, airlines, air leaks. Like, it just adds up to a lot more, if you know what I mean. I like it. It does ride nice. It does ride nice. These are probably the ones that we will actually be installing. Plus, it does have the added benefit, you'll find out with these electric motors, these hangers are on the outside. The rubber block, the hangers are on the inside. So one of the things right now, we only have about this much clearance between the electric motors and the rubber block hangers, which means that there's side-to-side movement, the motor could hit it. With this one, we would have about this much clearance between that electric motor. That's much better. On the production trucks, air ride is what I want. This is an airliner. Personally, I prefer the Hendrickson Primax, just because you get independent torque arms on each side, one side arm. The New-Way AZ, it's a good suspension. I really liked it when they had just one torque arm. What they've done is they've run a wishbone. Basically, an arm comes out between each side and down into the middle. The problem is it doesn't allow any sway this side, because if you got this and it sways this way, you're wearing out those bushings. The guys I've heard in the logging application are wearing out their bushings on the New-Way. I don't know who designed at New-Way that one that comes this way. For that reason, I really like the Primax a lot more. Hendrickson, with just the torque arms being down here to hold the axle. You get two torque arms holding it. It's a little bit more. You just have the same one side-to-side torque arm. It's a better air ride suspension compared to this, compared to the New-Way. The airliner one that Freightliner Western Star have, I gotta admit, is a really good suspension too. I had this on a Western Star I drove. Rarely had any problems with it. The only problem I ever did have is that there's a shear bolt down there. Sometimes I would shear that. But there's a little bolt underneath that holds this onto this leaf spring here. Sometimes I broke that. But that's better than the Peterbilt style. The Peterbilt style has a different goofy leaf spring, and one summer I snapped 4 leaf springs on the Peterbilt style. It's smooth, but it's a highway truck suspension. Hendrickson, as far as I'm concerned, either airliner, if you have a Western Star, the airliner, or anything else, Hendrickson, Primax, even a Western Star with Hendrickson is a little bit better, but yeah. Want to see a spring pack? It is the worst suspension. This is the suspension that came off of Carl, our prototype proof of concept electric truck. This is what they had back in the 50s. It is rough as hell. This is literally just a bunch of metal springs. What is that? A good 8-10 inches of metal springs. Do you know, this is what the Pacific P16s use? And they use 1-inch plate spring pack. This is 3/4 inch. But, as you can tell, there is not a lot of give. This is worse than the rubber block. And on each side, they have a torsion arm at the bottom, which is kind of nice. It's like the Hendrickson Primax, individual torque arms on each side. And then they increase that more. Check out how skookum these are. These are why you can tell they're off-road. Not only do we have torque arms underneath, we have torque arms up here. You have a look at the one we just put on the truck, and then have a look at those torque arms. Jesus wept. That thing is just, that is solid. I mean, there's a reason why this suspension still exists today. Now, let's see an even worse suspension. This is the worst suspension you could probably have. It is just solid mount. There is no springs, there is no bushings. This is strictly a walking beam attached, solid mounted to the axle, welded on, bolted on. It doesn't get any rougher than this. This is your pure off-highway fully loaded suspension. This truck here, one we call Snowman, is it's another spring pack. You can see spring pack, Rockwell top loaders. These Rockwell top loaders you see down there, this truck you're not doing more than 50-60 kilometers an hour. She's a low geared off highway rig. Here we got a little Kenworth, and this is the PACCAR style lighter duty suspension. On here, see these leaf springs? Yeah, right in here. You can see how much weaker those 2 points are than any of the other things I've shown you. But that's PACCAR. It does great on a highway application. That's what it's for. The main point of this whole video that I really wanted to point out is that it's not like Ford. If you go to Ford, Mazda, GM, you get the suspension that Ford builds. When it comes to the world of Class 8 heavy-duty trucks, you get the suspension you choose. You can go into any truck dealership and say, hey, I want a Hendrickson on my truck. Hey, I want a New Way. Hey, I want, okay, the Kenworth 8-bag and the Airline are specific to Daimler and PACCAR. But apart from those two, you can walk into anything. You can go say, oh, I want a Chalmers. I want a Smart. Smart has a really cool one with hydraulics, but that's a really fancy off-highway one. Point is, when it comes to our suspension, we can kind of put whatever the customer wants on a truck. I prefer Primax. I'm probably going to default to Primax unless they tell me otherwise. But we can do whatever they want. One of the other things for this suspension, why we went with this, be honest with you, lead time. We saved a lot in lead time by going with this. For some reason, our local parts place had these basically in stock or could overnight the rest of the parts. The Primax had a few week lead time. So we looked at it and we're like, well, do we wait weeks and weeks to get the Primax, or do we go with the rougher one? And then we thought, well, the rougher one actually has its benefits. So all things considered. But these are some of those decisions that weigh in on, that's why we came out with this new membership program that now that YouTube does this. We figured that our, well, frankly, most dedicated fans, or like the fans that were like, hey, here's $20 a month. It really goes a long way to help us, especially because Theron's doing a bunch of the filming. We got him on full time. That absolutely helps. And we figured those ones helping support us like that should absolutely be privy to the insight. So when we have questions, like, and we really debate these a lot in our team. There's at least 10 core decision makers, and we sit there and we debate. Do we do rubber block? Do we do air ride? Primax, New Way, lead time versus availability versus cost. This is actually a little bit cheaper too. We debate all these things. So what we thought we'd do is, to the most dedicated members, come up with a membership program. And on that tier, we're going to post these questions. Post the problems and things we have. Because we find if we just put it out to the general public, we have to sort through a lot of very uneducated questions, for lack of a better word. I don't know how else to phrase that, but yeah, we thought the most dedicated people are the ones that are most following, most up to date in the content. We can reach out to them and say, hey, we need a suspension on this truck. What do you think? Or, hey, we're coming up with pricing structure for the e-axles. What do you think we should do for this? Give us the feedback. Color of the truck. Battery mounting. Like, there's so many questions we have where things like this. Do we, like, this truck is an off-highway truck, and we were debating, do we make a light spec, really light, easy to show off tractor and really impress people with the weight savings, or do we build the toughest truck possible? Those are questions that we're going to be asking our top level members, because right now, and yeah, we went with super heavy. But that's our suspension video, guys. Thanks for coming in. Hit like, follow, whatever. No, I don't know.
Subscribe. Purchase member. Check out our merch store. Merch sales help us a lot.
All the things you're supposed to say at the end of a YouTube, I don't care.
It goes a long way.
You really don't have to subscribe. You could just Google Edison Motors and it comes up. But